informed and involved in some way. So feel better soon, Councillor Grow. Okay, so we sort of jumped around in our agenda, moving those two items forward, but I'm glad that we were able to address those things and get those people, find people home before we have to finish up all the other stuff that needs to be done here. So we're going to go back to the items on the agenda as they were listed, other than 6.6 and 6.7. So number 4, there's no delegations. Number 5, there's no in-camera session. And number 6, staff reports, administration report SR-117-22, update to the human resource policy manual, electronic monitoring of employees. And the recommendation is a motion that's coming forward by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the committee of the whole recommends that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-54-054, being a bylaw to further amend bylaw number 606-034 personnel policy manual as amended to include HR-52 electronic monitoring of employees. Discussion on this motion. Seeing none, we'll move forward and call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item on the agenda is 6.2, administration report SR-123-22, update to human resource policy manual HR-11 paid holidays. Motion comes forward from Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the committee of the whole recommends that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-056, being a bylaw to further amend bylaw number 6-034 personnel policy manual as amended for the revision of the human resource policy HR-11 paid holidays to include the federal statutory holiday titled National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Jameson.
Yeah, I made the motion, but I do have a question. The hodgepodge of days, looking at it, and I may be wrong, 11 days. Some are federal. In the case of Easter Monday and Remembrance Day is actually not a statutory holiday in general. That's always been controversial for a lot of good and bad reasons. But what I'm wondering about with this one, just because it came up, is whether we should be harmonizing with the provincial statutory holidays. This municipality is a corporation under the provincial jurisdiction. And I guess I'm looking and saying, well, there's federal here and a couple of them don't exist. And in fact, Easter Monday is not a holiday anywhere. I'm from the private sector, so you know, I look at this and I don't see this. So I'm just wondering if we should consider not at this moment, but in the longer term, harmonizing these things in the context of provincial statutory holidays, so there's a consistency.
We'll ask the HR manager or the CAO. Yeah, I just figured that the HR manager might be able to give further rationale as to why it was put forward this way.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. Currently, our existing policy does speak to any other day which is proclaimed as a public holiday by the federal government, and as well as our collective agreement for the QP Public Works Division. So that's why we are, including this day, National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, into the policy, because of our policy right now, and the collective agreement does state that we recognize holidays declared by the federal government.
So it's more to dovetail into the agreement we already have with the QP union, as well as offering it to the non-unionized staff. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and it's included in our existing policy. So,
Your Worship, my point is that longer term, I would like to see staff and future councils consider harmonizing with statutory in the province. Just for me, it's less about who gets a day off and more about some consistency of approach, because we are dealing with 2 holidays that actually do not exist as holidays.
Okay.
just as a point.
So it's requested that we consider future negotiations to meet the federal guidelines or meet the provincial guidelines, I should say, not the federal guidelines, rather than because we're governed by the provincial policy statement, correct? Or municipal act, I should say. Is that?
Well, essentially, I mean, statutory is statutory and non-statutory is non-statutory. There are statutory holidays that the province recognizes the federal. They're obvious things like Christmas Day. I'm just saying in the course of trying to move us into the 21st century, which I'm sure you are, some of these things to harmonize so that we're in lockstep with what is going on in the jurisdiction that controls us, which is in effect the province. So that's all I'm asking at this point. I just found it a little confusing when I started to research, well, what is actually a holiday and what is not, that we're kind of all over the shop, which is not the fault of the staff. It's just the way it's been. I'm just saying, let's down the road, let's look at a little different way of organizing. So just a suggestion. Thank you, Your Worship.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay. Counselor, maybe?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, being employed where I am, we are governed by the provincial holiday schedule, which is what is present here. So I would have to say that I get Easter Monday also, and everything that's listed here governed by the province. Thank you.
Okay. So any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and we're carried. Okay, next item is 6.3 Operations Report SR-121-22 Disposal of Asset Gazebo in Furnace Falls Park. Motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council authorize staff to declare the gazebo in Furnace Falls Park as surplus, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council authorize staff to dispose of the surplus asset, and that any revenues generated from the disposal of the surplus asset are reserved for the Lyndhurst Wildlife Viewing Platform. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I've been made aware that there are people who are of the opinion that this is not the township's item to dispose of. And there's some hard feelings about that. I know that the LRC raised money for it, that Procter and Gamble's, the late great Procter and Gamble's workmen came and helped assemble it in certain places, that somehow the township owns it. Could we
Get some clarification.
get some clarification on how the township comes to own something like this when other people pay for it and put it together, unless it's declared at the time a gift to the township?
I'm wondering if it's similar to our Rockport situation where people basically paid to have something built or renovated, and then maybe it wasn't as formalized in Lyndhurst, but I'll let the director speak to that.
So given that it's on our property, the assumption was that it is our asset. We maintain it now that Procter and Gamble no longer exists, and it's not accessible for the public. So that's the concern that we had with that at the same time. I will look into ownership. I'll find out of how it all came to be. But I was led to believe that because it is on our property, it has become our asset, which is why, for this value, it's not something that has to get approval through council, but I know that this is a bit of a concern. So that's why I wanted to bring this item to council and committee of the whole.
Councillor Jameson.
I appreciate what you're saying, and township owns it. And I think the compromise with having the funds realized from the sale of it is a nice compromise. I hate to bring up 1967, but a group of citizens built a teepee in Sealy's Bay. And the reason that I'm making this comment, and I'll tell you the story, is that all those many decades later, people were very upset when the teepee came down because the teepee had rotted out and it was the property of the township. But here's the issue. The issue is there was, and you weren't even around then, but the issue was we had 50 some odd years of no maintenance. So it rotted and it was going to fall down. So we took it down. We now have an asset management program, and we have a lot of assets that have been neglected, and we know they've been neglected for many years, but now we can make a plan. So in this case, we have an asset that my understanding is probably wouldn't meet municipal standards. If we went out and wanted to build a gazebo of some kind, it wouldn't be that one. It would have to be to a different standard. So now we're going to do something else there. But my point is that whatever we do, let's fix the stuff from now on in. Let's not leave things for like Springfield Complex. Do something in 1985 and then let it rot for the next 20 years. Let's make sure as we move ahead, I'm sounding like it's my last meeting, but let's make sure we move ahead that we actually fix things. And I say that to you because I know that you understand and are pursuing it in that way. So I think this is a nice compromise for our good friends up in Lyndhurst, but we'll find out.
Director, did you have anything else to add to that?
The only thing that I would like to add to this is that recognizing that the LRC does have vested interest in this asset, our intent was to take the money gained from the sale of this asset and put it towards another LRC project, which is the viewing platform.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and recognize what my dear colleague across the balcony had to say, which is absolutely true, by the way. I think it was just seen as somewhat perfunctory that this decision was made. I think people will be happy with what is done with the proceeds, but there were maybe some sensitivities about how the decision was made.
So to that, no decisions have been made to this point. That's why there's a report coming through committee of the whole and to
Okay.
council before a decision is made.
There perhaps was a perception that a decision had been made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, keep in mind is that this is committee of the whole and that the final decision isn't made till council. So after, depending on which way this motion goes, further information can come forward for ratification at council. And there's additional information that can come forward. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. All those opposed? All those abstained? And we're carried. Okay. So number 6.4, operations report SR-122-22, RFP OPS 2022-013, architectural consulting services for new fire hall. And the recommendation that's put on the agenda was incomplete, and the director sincerely apologizes for there was a piece left off the end. So what's been published is incomplete. So we'll need an amendment to the motion that's going to come forward. So I'm going to put the motion on the floor and then have you speak to the missing information so that we can amend the motion. Okay. So the motion is moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the committee of the whole recommends that council authorize staff to engage Idea Inc. for the design and contract administration of the new fire hall to be located at 3300 County Road 32. Councillor Maybe made the motion, Councillor Fody seconded. So the motion is now on the floor. I'll let the director speak to the additional information that should be added to this motion.
Thank you. Through your worship. There is a paragraph missing from this recommendation. We are recommending that we authorize the Idea Inc. for the design. However, we didn't speak to the financial aspect of how we're going to fund this project. So we have a budget that was approved for $400,000. We acquired the land from the Slice, and we really appreciate that, by the way. Leaving us with $159,197. So this contract with Idea Inc. is for $337,744.49, leaving us a funding shortfall of $178,547.49. Our recommendation is that the remaining 159 that of the 337,744.49, 159,197 be funded from 2022 existing capital that remains, and the shortfall be funded from the 2023 capital. as part of the larger project with the design. So with this project, the total scope of the project is for the $337,000 is the design. It is also the contract administration and the post-construction work, the warranties and the training and all of those kinds of things. So we don't anticipate that we're going to spend anywhere near the $159,000 in the remainder of 2022, which is why we would like to fund the remainder, carry over the project and fund the remainder in 2023. So that's what I was
Okay.
missing from my.
So
my
I'm
recommendation.
going to speak the amendment and then seek a mover and a seconder. So we've already gone through the motion that the design and contract administration of the new fire hall be located at 3300 County Road 32, and that the remaining, this is the amendment portion, and that the remaining 2022 capital budget line item of $159,197 be used, and the shortfall of $178,547.49 be funded from the 2023 capital budget. Proposed capital budget, I guess it should say. Or projected. Which do you prefer? Proposed? Okay. So that's because we had I'll ask for a mover for the amendment. So we have Councillor Jameson and then Councillor Maybe. Okay, so the amendment is on the floor. Just to further clarify what the director said, we have a budget line item of $400,000 for this, which the land was purchased out of that amount of 400,000, and the remaining funds in that budget line item is the $159,197. Okay. And then the additional funds, which obviously this Idea Inc. is going to require some funds in 2022 and will not require the balance until 2023, which allows us to budget the further funds in 2023 as we go through budgeting process, correct? Okay. Is that clear as mud to everybody? Councillor Jameson?
I now understand it. So if I look at it, I'm reading that we have a contract for $337,000 and we're going to stage it. So this first lot of money in 2022 represents a stage of this contract. And we are in a position to not be required to pay the balance of that contract until 2023. Am I getting that right, Your Worship?
That is correct. 2023 and 2024 to finish the
Well, of
project.
course, right. But here's my question then. Can we, at this stage, make a motion to commit the next council to a capital expense?
We just, for clarification, we do this all the time at the county level. You're allowed to, especially with contracts that happen over multiple years, it's like pre-budget approval is essentially what it is. So I'm speaking from experience at the county, and I'll ask the treasurer to clarify this. But there's lots of items that we often commit to over longer periods of time. And I don't believe we're in contravention of any municipal law at that point in time, unless the CAO or the treasurer has anything else to add. Nope. Okay. So I appreciate the question so that we don't get ourselves into any sort of hot water, but and we're not lame duck. That's the other. So we did ask that question early on. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment, which is that the remaining 2022 capital budget line for this project of $159,197 be used, and that the shortfall of $178,547.49 be funded from the proposed 2023 capital budget. And that amendment was made by Councillor Jameson and Councillor Maybe. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? And that is carried. So the full motion reads that the committee of the whole recommends that council authorize staff to engage Idea Inc. for the design and contract administration of the new fire hall to be located at 3300 County Road 32, and that the remaining 2022 but capital budget line $159,197 be used, and the shortfall of $178,547.49 be funded from the proposed 2023 capital budget. So all those in favor of the amended motion, please signify. All those opposed, and we're carried. There we go, Director. Thank you. Okay, so we've already done 6.6, we've already done 6.7. So 6.8 is planning report SR-111-22.
6.5.
Oh, sorry, sorry. Oh, you know why? Because I had on my notes there. My apologies. I didn't mean to skip over that. Operations report. I wondered why you're continuing to stand there. Operations report SR-124-22 RFP OPS 2022-014 engineering services to complete a municipal class environmental assessment and preliminary design for the new treated water storage facility. And that the committee of the whole recommends that council authorize staff to engage JL Richards and Associates for engineering services to complete a municipal class environmental assessment and preliminary design for the new treated water for storage facility in the village of Lansdowne in the amount of $75,973 inclusive of the net HST. And that motion comes forward with Councillor Maybe and seconded by Councillor Fody. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe, and then Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Worshipman, through you. If we could have the director give us some background on this again, just to be clear on what they're going to be looking for. Thank you.
Yes. So what we're looking at is capacity for storage in our water system to meet the FUS, the Fire Underwriter Service guidelines. It's that perfect storm circumstance where the power is out, our generators aren't operating, and we have a massive fire that requires at least 2 hours of firefighting. If I said that correctly? 2 hours of firefighting. In that instance, we don't currently have enough capacity in our system to support the fire services to fight that fire. Now, we do have our backup generators. We're on Ontario Hydro. All of those things work in our favor, but this is the standard that we have to adhere to. So to look at this, the first step is to undertake the municipal class environmental assessment, which is looking at our current system and looking at environmental impacts if we are to increase our storage and have to increase our pumping capacity, the aquifer, all the reviews that have to be done in order to comply with that. So this is engaging an engineering firm, and I apologize, there's reference in the analysis to Idea Inc. and Idea Inc. is not involved in this project. I just noticed that. But this is engaging an engineer to look at our system and not only build it for our current population that we have, but also looking out, I think you said 10, 20 years as well is the horizon that they typically look at for achieving that with the potential growth that we will have in the village as well.
Okay, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. That was my premier question that the councillor maybe had asked, and you've thoroughly answered that. I guess the other thought that I had was that by approving this, we're not approving the build of anything, correct? This is merely a study to see where we currently stand and what requirements may be.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
This requires the approval of the MECP. It's going to be, we have to do what's the word I'm looking for? Archaeological studies. We have to do the hydrogeological studies, all of that type of information before that decision is made to actually construct anything.
Right. An estimated timeline for all that?
They estimate that the timeline for going through this process is about 8 months.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay, now we've done 6.6 and 6.7. And we're on to 6.8, planning report SR 111 22 Heritage Committee Resolution, historic significance of cemeteries and need for a cemeteries policy. Motion comes forward from Deputy Mayor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Oki that the committee of the whole recommends that council direct staff to review current processes and protocols regarding cemetery maintenance and bring forward cemeteries policy for council's consideration. And that the review include consideration of private and township owned cemeteries, cultural heritage and tourism impacts. And that the review also include a review of potential budget and resource allocations as well as a risk assessment. So the motion's on the floor, discussion, if any. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Through you, your worship, just for clarification, on cemeteries, when they become, they don't have sufficient funds to do their maintenance, to stay established, we generally have to take them over anyway, do we not?
I believe that is under the act that we are to assume the responsibility of maintenance and care. But the real crux of the reason this coming forward is because more and more of these issues are popping up and we don't have a standardized way to deal with them or a standardized policy. So staff are looking for direction from us to standardize how we deal with them and what method in which we deal with them in order to take over any potential cemetery. And then also what budget allocation is there, because we've had some issues with some cemeteries locally that have been sort of teetering on the fence, and they're not our asset, but we are we've been assisting and helping maintenance and upkeep, and that is, you can't keep your toe in on both sides of the fence, so to speak. So I believe this is the intent of the policy, is to be very clear. Does that help, Councillor? Okay. Councillor Olkey, you had your hand up? You're good? Okay. Councillor Fody and then Councillor Mady.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have the luxury of having the chair of our Municipal Heritage Committee here, Mr. Keith Fly, tonight.
Mhm.
Perhaps he would want to come forward and shed any light that we may not be aware of on this process and how he sees this in the future. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Sly.
Thank you very much. I have to say that I looked at the report that was prepared by the planning department, and I think they covered everything fairly well. I only have a couple of small things to say about the report, and I don't know whether everyone's looked at it in detail. There are a number of cemeteries that are listed in the report. I know if I find the page here, which are, well, in all of the pages, if you're looking at the report, where it says in the fourth column over the number, the license number for the township's licenses there, it ends in 3284. There are a number of cemeteries which are on the township's license, which in fact the township does not own and doesn't have anything to do with, except that in the mind of the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, they are the township's responsibility. I think the clerk deals with them in regard to those things, but it's a little bit, those cemeteries eventually may become responsibilities in a more concrete way in terms of maintenance. The other thing is there are a number of cemeteries listed in the list which have no number, which means that the Bereavement Authority of Ontario doesn't even know that they exist, but they're well acknowledged by members of the community and the genealogical groups who have already recorded them. And again, those, I think at some point in the future will become a responsibility of the municipality in some way or other. Apart from that, I think the report is fine. And I hope that as the staff proceeds with developing the policy, that they will be consulting with the various cemeteries in the township. Some obviously are in need of assistance. Others are doing well. And I hope that continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sly. Councillor Fody, you can follow up, and then Councillor Mady.
Thank you, Your Worship. Personally, I've been involved in cemeteries for 40 some odd years now. And I think this direction is ideal in the sense of what's being transpired yearly with certain cemeteries. And the responsibilities are being passed down in the case of even some churches that are wishing to walk away from their own property. So I can see this multiplying in the future, and I commend the Municipal Heritage Committee for bringing this idea forward before we end up with a lot of hot potatoes on our lap, so to speak. So I think forward planning on this topic is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. One of my questions is the records of the cemeteries and capturing all that information and having it in one concise place. Some of them being private as they are might be a little bit more difficult, but it's going to fall in our lap sooner or later. So the process of starting that might be more poignant with this particular bylaw. So I would hope that we do start that process to look after this. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed or carried. Thank you, members of the committee and the staff who've turned their mind to this, because I do believe that it will be more prevalent as time marches on, and changeover of properties happens or doesn't happen. So next item on the agenda is 6.9 planning report SR-116-22 update to building bylaw to include provisions for sewage system administration, radon mitigation measures, and administrative updates. Motion comes forward from Deputy Mayor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Oakey that Committee of the Whole recommends that the council approve the bylaw attached to planning report SR-116-22 as Exhibit A to repeal bylaw number 13-028 and approve an updated building bylaw, including requirements for the administration of sewage systems in accordance with the Ontario Building Code, add provisions regarding requirements for radon mitigation measures and certain administrative updates. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. I have about 4 questions here. The first one is the plot plan that comes with the application. In some cases, the drawing is almost illegible. I know that something needs to be done with some of those on some of the plans. Digital plans by the owner for small buildings, is that still required, or just larger homes with larger value? Another one. Roof plans, including stamped engineered design layouts for roof trusses or engineered floor joists. Having a hard time even getting the product, let alone having a roof company. And I was just about to look it up. I know that to get a permit, you have to have stamped trusses, but in this case, it's actually stating that they must come with the permit. And right now, truss companies are barely even supplying when you need it. So I'm wondering if that wording could be changed from needing it at plan time to it will be supplied for the build. Because again, a trust company will not necessarily give you that engineered plan pre permit, because they're under the gun of making these up. I know one trust company right now who is not building any trusses for any homeowners, only businesses, big businesses that are doing this. And a recent build that I was involved in, we couldn't get engineered floor trusses. So we went with conventional lumber, which is of course a stamped product. So, there's a lot of problem with that particular wording in my mind. So I'd like to see it maybe changed. It's still important. And I see that, and I agree with it 100%. It's got to be stamped at some point. But I think for the permit procedure, I'm not sure whether it needs to be done there.
Can I just have you stop there, and then I'll let the planner speak to that particular
Thank you.
item?
So the wording that's in the bylaw is right out of the act, and I do appreciate the points that you're bringing forward. But what I can provide for clarification around that is that we've been conditioning and requiring truss drawings when we get to that point of construction in terms of the stamping. So the wording in the bylaw is what it is, and it's directly coming out of the act. but we use discretion when we are processing the permits to make sure that we get the information when it's required. We recognize that there's a lot of challenges lately with getting stamped engineering drawings and getting different supplies on site. So we have been working with applicants to expedite their permits and require the information when it's necessary. Okay.
Thank you very much. That's really what we need. Yes.
Any other comments or questions in regards to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. Number 6.10, Finance Report SR-119-22, updated user access to online investment account. Motion comes forward from Councillor Oki, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lackey, that Committee of the Whole recommends that Council designate Kate Tyndall, Director of Finance, and Jessica Thane, Deputy Treasurer, as the users authorized to access the Township's BMO investor line account, and that the previously authorized users be hereby revoked and removed from the account. Discussion on this motion. All those in favor of the motion at hand, please signify. Those opposed, and we're carried. Thank you. Number 6.11, Administration Report SR-115-22, Customer Complaint Policy. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lackey, seconded by Councillor Oki, that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-057, being a bylaw to establish a customer complaint policy in the Township of Leeds in the Thousand Islands. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
There is a very long list of what it doesn't apply to in the bulk of the report. I guess what is confusing me as a result of reading that is it would be helpful to have an example of a customer complaint and then how we deal with it under this regime. Is that
I think that's
not
clarity.
necessarily for today, but just because I'm not understanding what it would actually look like when it happened?
Does anybody, who's the author? Oh, sorry, clerk, go ahead.
No worries, for your worship. Just for clarification, there are examples of complaints in the policy, but staff would be more than happy to include an example as well in the policy if that's what council would like.
Okay. Okay, so that satisfies Councillor Jameson. Any other comments or concerns in regards to this motion? Go ahead, Councillor Foti.
Thank you, Your Worship. The general public, I assume, don't surf the township web on a daily basis. So I'm thinking that those that do wish to make a complaint, is it easy for them to find this page when they turn on the township website? I would think that my point, just to duplicate, if I was wanting to make a complaint and the township was recommending I do it online, we need to make this as streamlined and as simplified as possible to access. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's something that the clerk can take under advisement. Go ahead.
Through your worship, so staff are currently working on a page for where residents can access, where they can report an informal or formal complaint. Once we have developed that process, we'd be more than willing to share that with council as well as staff, making sure that they have the training for what the customer complaint policy entails. And then we'll also communicate this to the public as well. So I think, where it will be on the page, it will be communicated in an appropriate manner.
We also have the report it function, which I think was maybe used as part of the complaints process previously, which really it's more report it function is for operational issues and of the things of those nature rather than complaints, if you will. I guess it does apply to bylaw concerns and what have you, but I think that this policy is to further clarify complaints as it's detailed in the report. So, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I was basically saying it's like a work order system where somebody logs in, they put in all their information, it goes to the proper director or whatever, and then is actioned. That's put on it and then sent back to the complainant or customer so that they have a record of it also. And that's what I believe we already have. So it would be maybe just an offshoot of that.
I believe that's
Yeah.
what they're working on right now. But as time wears on and all of council and especially our staff appreciate everything's being documented going forward. And that's why it's not that we don't want to deal with people in person and have them come into the offices, but it's that we want to have documentation and a paper trail so that we can say, you made this complaint or reported the tree down on such and such a road on certain date, certain time, and that the work order was created, if you will, to go have that removed. And then it was removed by 3 p.m. on the same day or what have you. So we have record of it in case somebody says, well, I hit it at 6 p.m. with my car. It was gone by 3 p.m., that sort of thing. Yeah. So I appreciate the level of detail that we're getting down to and fine tuning the pencil, getting it sharper by the day. Any further comments or questions on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay, so 6.12 Administration Report SR-099-22 Establishment of a Joint Leeds Grenville Compliance Audit Committee. Deputy Mayor moves it and Councillor Oki seconds it. That the committee of the whole recommends that council grant 3 readings of final passage to bylaw number 22-053 to being a bylaw to establish the joint Leeds Grenville Compliance Audit Committee for the 2022 to 2026 term. Discussion on this motion. See none. Oh, Councillor Fody, you're in before the buzzer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had a thought, I guess I would term it as, when I read through this, that perhaps this committee would be better served by current clerks in the municipality. And then I realized maybe that's why it's not, because the clerks realize the workload involved and would rather have an arm's length committee to deal with this. Yes, no?
So go ahead.
Through your worship, that's correct. And a special shout out to the clerks group here in the county. Just being able to pull our resources together and form a committee like this, but also share resources is really just a great collaborative approach that we have here in the county.
And just to add to that, it further solidifies collaboration throughout the county and our ties to the county and using every resource and all the experience in the years, whether you've been a clerk for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, it's important to have all those perspectives there. So, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay, on to number 7, information items. There are none. Any unfinished business? Your notice of motion or unfinished business? Okay, sorry. Unfinished business. Go ahead, Councillor Oki.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. It's come up many times, I think, but township signage, I have spoken to the operations director, but specifically the one at the east end of the township line on Highway 42 is disappeared. And there is a resident very upset about that. I gather some of our other boundary signs, like welcome to TLTI, are in need of refurbishment, and just would like people out there to have some sense that this is being done.
Okay, Director.
Thank you. Through your worship. These signs have been constructed. There are 11 in total that we have to replace that we had not anticipated in our 2022 budget. But as Councillor Oki has stated, they've started to fall down. So we do have to replace them. We're not just replacing the 1 or 2 that are falling. We're replacing them all at the same time because it seems to be a trend that's happening, that they're all at the end of their life. So the signs have been constructed. We're just waiting on the contractor to be available in order to install them at this point. And we're hoping within the next week.
Thank you. And there's a supplemental.
Yep.
The other aspect is the dockage at Furnace Falls Park. The signs that put up the restrictions for the use of the kayak and the canoe launch appear to be put up where the boat mooring section of the dockage is. And there are different rules for each section. There needs to be some kind of post put up with the rules for the kayak launch, which is attached to the main dockage where motorboats can tie up. But it appears to many people coming in that there's no mooring allowed and there's no swimming allowed. Yet on another sign right by, swimming is allowed under supervision and there's a swimming ladder. So people are going into various local merchants and screaming and yelling about what is this township trying to do to people? So please have your staff rearrange these signs. And one of these park usage signs is on the gazebo that is going to be coming out. So there needs to be some coordination here. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. We will make the revisions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, worship. Don't go away. I don't know which meeting it was, but we had a small discussion about the train whistles. And there was going to be a report brought back.
Train whistles in Lansdowne.
Well, in all our crossings in the township.
Okay, yeah, the director is, I'm blanking on it a little bit. I remember a discussion. I don't remember the direction from that, but the director is nodding his head, so he's going to follow up on that. Anything else? That's it. Oh, I got off easy. Oh, Counselor Jameson.
I'm sorry, since we're talking about signs, I just want to mention the park sign in Centennial Park has been modified to take out no smoking. We can now smoke in the park. So director and I have had a couple of exchanges on the signs. So basically, we're just not going to have any more fun. It's much easier to put no fun up instead of a whole list of things we're not allowed to do. So I don't want to see anybody swimming at the docks in Sealy's Bay, which is a very legitimate concern. I just want to say because of the electrical capacity of those docks for the boats, that there is some concern, and that should be noted. But I'm having a hard time on these signs, but I haven't had to move yet. So I just.
Okay. Any other thing to add to the director's list?
If I could, through your worship, to Deputy Mayor, I have reached out to the rail line, and this might come as a surprise. I never got a response back about the whistles. So I will follow up with them again and try to get a bit of a lead on it. I reached out to every contact that I knew there, and yeah, nothing.
Unfortunately, and I'm going to throw CN under the bus here. This is the norm throughout the counties. Front of Young has had an issue with train whistles and a number of issues with their crossing in the village. And I've been asking, I think they've been at it more than 5 years with very little response back. Now, having said that, the safety of the crossings have been addressed because of the Ministry of Transport. They mandated that the crossings had to be brought up to snuff by 2023. So those have been dealt with, but in regards to whistles and safety, other than the actual crossing, they're not as responsive as one would hope, considering that we also get sent a bill to pay for the wigwags in all of our crossings, because we have to pay for maintenance of that signal maintenance. That's partially our cost as a municipality. But anyways, I digress. Councillor Fody.
On a lighter note, I will give credence and credit to CN because of our request in the past 3.5 years plus. They did get all the railway crossings, most of the crossings redone. So I have faith that they'll address this too, maybe even in my lifetime.
Fair enough. Councillor Jameson.
So on the matter of safety, and after taking a couple of shots about signs, I'd just like to thank our operations department for getting the lights at the east and west entrance of Sealy's Bay. It's been a long time. People have waited for that. The MTO let us down, but I really appreciate the township stepped up and did it. And we really need to look down the road, not too far down the road, to the junction, as well as the end of Lyndhurst Road, a few other places where safety needs to be a priority for us. If other jurisdictions won't help, I think we're going to have to get into that business ourselves. So thank you very much, much appreciated.
Maybe we should start sending bills.
Yes.
I don't think the minister would appreciate that. Counselor Olkey and then Counselor Maybe.
At the risk of whatever, flashing lights and signs, the school zone at Sweets Corners Public School remains an irritant. 24/7 speed reduction. And I know that we have approached county on it.
I will follow up. I'll make a note to follow up as well. And Director, go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship, I actually had a conversation with the county about this the other day. The hardware has been purchased, has been acquired. They're just waiting for delivery. Because of COVID, they've been waiting for 8 months now. Well, I believe that the bylaw has already been
Yeah,
approved where
we
it's
changed it
when
back.
flashing.
So it would flash within, I
I
think,
think it's when school is in operation.
so it's like from 8 until 5
4.
or 4 or something to that effect. Yes. And then resume. I believe so. Yeah. I can get clarification on that though for you. Yes. Counselor Maybe.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, this is on other business, not unfinished business, that Terry Fox Run is on the 18th. The Thousand Island Terry Fox Run is out of the Rockport Community Building, setting off at 9 o'clock, and the Gananoque one setting off at 10 o'clock. And as I have the privilege of setting both of them off, it'll be a fun little event. So please come out and support Terry Fox.
And
Thank
that
you.
date on that again?
That's the 18th of September.
Thank you. Any other business? So just to critique you, Counselor Jameson, you were under the wrong thing because that was finished business with the lights.
I'll take the jail time.
Okay, fair enough. Notices of motion, seeing no other business. Oh, sorry. I will go back to other business, which is to say that the Director Holiday and I had a meeting with the Minister of Transportation on the Monday after AMO. We had a delegation scheduled for the Wednesday previous at the last day of AMO, but she had to cancel and we're rescheduled on the Monday. Having said that, we brought forward 4 different items that we had consistently had been asking for help from MTO. I must say that I won't speak for the Director, but I was impressed with the level of detail and the commitment and clarity that the minister provided to following up on certain things. Obviously, one of the things was Highway 32 and 15, the junction, and what that will be going forward once the fire hall is put there. The flashing light at Highway 2 and the off ramp for the 401 westbound. They're looking into that. The 32 one has been delayed until we're closer to having something there that might change the traffic patterns, because doing the studies now, it wouldn't necessarily be indicative of the traffic that will come out of there because of the fire hall. And changing speed limits. That was the other thing. We were asking for a speed limit change on Highway 15 to reduce people coming down the valley to avoid possible collisions at that point in time. We also had concerns about signage on the 401 or lack thereof, and that the number of transports that use the Thousand Islands Parkway as an EDR rather than Highway 2. Unfortunately, when the EDR was enacted a week ago today or yesterday, Fire Chief, I believe it was on the Monday. And essentially, the 401 was shut down due to an accident at Reynolds Road. They were rerouting traffic. People were trying to get around the traffic jam, if you will. And unfortunately, the little tiny sign that says no trucks on the parkway as you get off on the eastbound, where you go to get off on Highway 2, people were taking the parkway off ramp because there's just a tiny little sign there. It doesn't say it on the big sign before you go to get off. And so that was the main thing that we had impressed upon the minister, that the signage is not adequate enough. And the reason I bring up what happened here last Monday night, we had a severe head-on collision on the Thousand Islands Parkway between Jack Straw Lane and Grace Beach, sort of right in front of Fox Run, so to speak, because somebody got impatient with the number of transports and the backed up traffic that were on the parkway and passed on a double level yellow line, which is not the fault of the transport drivers, but that road is not built to take that kind of traffic. We do have a number of entrances and exits off the parkway, which could be dangerous in the event of that. And it's not appropriate. I'm grateful to know that there were no fatalities that evening. I believe everybody did make it out and receive treatment. But it was also very difficult for our firefighters to get there because of the amount of traffic, not to mention the traffic that was on Highway 2. And a family member of mine was actually trapped in front of the fire hall in Mauritown, who was trying to also respond to the same thing as mutual aid. And the firefighters from Mauritown couldn't get through the traffic that were blocking the entrance and exit to the fire hall in Mauritown. So there's a lot of things to unpack there, but we need to do a better job at dealing with that. And then County Road 3 for the overpass at County Road 3. So the new, as everyone is aware, that was refurbished, but it wasn't refurbished to a point that it actually made it more safe. It made it more dangerous because of the sight lines. So we brought up the maps, and due to the work that our director did to make it very clear that it wasn't well thought out. And they accepted that criticism and said that they would be looking at sightlines and possibly moving guardrails even further, even though they've moved them once already, that they still are not adequate. It doesn't provide an adequate sightline because we do not need to have any further challenges at that overpass. And especially in an EDR situation when nobody can see. So anyways, so that's the other business that just report back. That was the only delegation we had at this point in time. But I would also like to report back that I did have meetings with Enbridge in regards to the possibility of bringing, working with community relations to see about the possibility of bringing natural gas here to the village. And they were eager to have a conversation with myself and staff in regards to studies that would make that appropriate. And I know our director of operations has plans for the realignment of streets and sidewalks and all the other things that will need to be addressed over the next 5 to 10 years. So now is the time to have that conversation, rather than rip up a brand new road to bring in natural gas, that we bring it in if at all possible. And to also foreseeably service large business that are on that line, which would be the large grain elevator that exists right beside the pipeline, I should say. So, and I managed to have lunch with the former deputy Prime Minister Sheila Copps, which was something totally out of the blue and inadvertent, but it was interesting to speak to her in her time at Parliament Hill. So anyways, other than that, for other business, is there any other business? Seeing none, notice of motion. Go ahead, Councillor Oki.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, with your indulgence, I'll read the drafts that I have. The first one is about the new CRCA regulatory proposals. This, as I'm sure everyone is aware, has engendered a lot of anxiety in this township and elsewhere. And my draft reads, whereas the Cataraqui Regional Conservation Authority recently published new draft guidelines, which raised serious concerns amongst many residents of TLTI. And whereas these concerns related to CRCA declarations of potential non-recognition of a landowner's grandfathering rights as provided for by the Government of Ontario's Planning Act. And whereas the CRCA also promulgated in draft design models for boathouses, which are different than those provided for in TLTI's zoning bylaws. And whereas correspondence with the Premier of Ontario and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry indicate that while provincial guidelines for conservation authorities to exist, conservation authorities receive detailed directions from their full authority boards. And now, therefore, be it resolved that Council correspond with the full authority board of CRCA and request that CRCA regulatory guidelines respect and state clearly the recognition of a TLTI landowner's grandfathering rights as provided for in the Planning Act. And further, that CRCA accept the guidelines for boathouse construction as provided for in TLTI zoning bylaws.
Thank you.
The second draft motion I have relates to Lower Oakleaf Road speed limit. Whereas Oakleaf Road in Ward 2 of TLTI is presently regulated for a speed of 80 kilometers per hour. And whereas numerous residents on Oakleaf Road, specifically in the 5 kilometers from the junction with Lyndhurst Road to Sugarbush Lane, have grave concerns regarding the existing speed limit, given the many turns, blind corners, and driveways. And whereas the speed and lack of visibility combine to pose a grave threat to pedestrians, bicyclists using the shoulders and margins of the road, and motorists attempting to enter or exit their driveways. And now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to review the traffic safety conditions on Oakleaf Road with a view to reducing the speed limit, at least within this 5 kilometer segment, from 80 kilometers per hour to 60 kilometers per hour. In addition, the placement of warning signs to motorists about the presence of children, pedestrians, and bicyclists must also be considered. Thank you.
Thank you for the notices of motion. So they'll come forward at council.
Yes.
Okay. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll go forward with the mayor's update. I'll make it brief. I already updated you in regards to AMO. Just to also give you an update on county, we had a number of delegations regarding POA. The Mapleview Lodge, it seems like it was 3 months ago now. It's not even 3 weeks. We had a number of delegations as well with different ministers regarding issues that are, we talked about infrastructure for electric vehicles as well, because rather than each municipality put in electric charging stations, that perhaps it needs to be better mapped out as a whole. As there is a push towards these electric vehicles, as people well know, we have one charging station here in the municipality. It's at the Lansdowne Public Library. And the interesting thing is there's no other charging stations in the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville other than privately owned ones. So the ones that are in, so we're it, which was an interesting thing for me to learn before we walked in. So anyways, and to also ask the minister as to what funding might be available in the future to offset this, because this is something that shouldn't be solely borne by municipalities to shoulder the costs. So it was a good conference. It was always interesting and always a great networking opportunity to meet a number of the companies and different agencies that we have to deal with. Always well worth the time and the effort to go to these things. Just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, as Councillor Oakley's already said, CRCA is willing to have a public consultation on September 15th. Unfortunately, we have a conflicting event that evening in Rockport for the OLG recognition event. I do understand that a couple of the councillors here are foregoing the event to be on that particular call with CRCA. I do think it's important that we recognize. I will be doing it from my phone so that if I need to add my 2 cents, I will. That's the beauty of technology. Even out on the river, we can pretend, but I appreciate the attention being paid by the councillor staying back. So in September 9th, I believe, is the Truffle Shuffle out in Sealy's Bay. Is that correct? And then September 17th is the Turkey Fair happening in Lyndhurst, and that will be the grand reopening of said Turkey Fair. Looking forward to that, and all the people that come to visit us for that. There was another event at the end of September that I'm totally blanking on. Sorry, thank you. The IPM, the 20th to the 24th in North Grenville in Kemptville on the old Kemptville College site. So if you haven't had the pleasure of attending an international plowing match, you should go, whether you're a farmer or not. There's something for everyone. It's very interesting and very informative, but it's a lot of fun, and it's great to see friends and neighbors out. And it is amazing the number of people that come from away, if you will, the 20th to the 24th. So if you have any wish, you can also volunteer. They're also still taking volunteers, and putting on something like the International Plowing Match is a massive undertaking. And they've done it in a very short period of time. So we wish them the best, and we will attend and hold the pom-poms in their stead. So I think that's everything for my mayor's update, unless there's anything else I've missed, staff or counselors. Oh, September 30th. Yes, thank you. I knew there was something at the end of September, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Just to be advised that the township will be closed for that date, for that day, in recognizing the Indigenous heritage of our community and the importance that it has played in shaping our future and will play going forward. So I urge everybody to do something to recognize, educate themselves, or contribute to Indigenous culture in our community. Seeing no other hands up, I will go with the motion to adjourn, which is done by Deputy Mayor Lackey and seconded by Councillor Olkey, that the committee of whole adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we are carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great night.